What if I told you that the entire history of modern Europe could have turned out differently because of a single day? The summer of 1683. At the gates of Vienna, the golden apple of the Habsburgs, stands the most powerful army in the world. This is not just a siege. It is a moment when the fate of an entire continent is being decided. A clash of empires, cultures, and faiths. The city is holding on with its last ounce of strength. Vienna is about to fall, and with it the road to the heart of Europe will open. It seemed that nothing could stop the gigantic Ottoman army. Panic and despair grip the West, and rulers prepare for the worst. But it is at this moment, when hope is almost gone, that a legend is born. An army of allies appears on the horizon, disparate forces united by their fear of a common enemy. Among them is a king whom many considered reckless. He doesn't just decide to join the battle, he bets on the impossible, on a swift cavalry attack against a fortified army. Watch the video to the end to find out how this daring strike by the Polish cavalry changed the course of history, why the Grand Vizier made a fatal mistake, and how just a few hours of battle determined the borders of Europe for the next 300 years. I will reveal to you a secret that is often overlooked. The Battle of Vienna was not a spontaneous event. It was the culmination of a century-long struggle between two worlds, two ideologies, and two superpowers of the time. The Ottoman Empire, under the rule of Sultan Mehmed IV, had reached the peak of its territorial power, stretching from Hungary to the Persian Gulf. In Istanbul, Vienna was called Kızıl Elma, or Golden Apple, a mythical symbol of the last barrier to complete domination in Europe. The conquest of this city would not only be a military victory, but the fulfillment of a centuries-old prophecy. The driving force behind this campaign was not so much the Sultan as his Grand Vizier, Kara Mustafa Pasha. He was a man of boundless ambition who dreamed of surpassing even Suleiman the Magnificent, who had failed at the walls of Vienna in 1529. Kara Mustafa saw this campaign as a chance not only to expand the empire, but also to strengthen his own power, which at times was almost absolute. He assembled an army of a size that Europe had not seen in a very long time, and was confident of a quick and easy victory. For him, it was a personal project, a gamble on which he staked everything. At the same time, his opponent, the Habsburg Empire, was going through far from the best of times, and it was the perfect moment to strike. The Holy Roman Emperor Leopold I was an indecisive man, more inclined towards music and piety than military affairs. His empire had been weakened by recent conflicts, and, more importantly, by internal divisions in Hungary. A significant part of the Hungarian nobility, led by Count Imre Thököly, rebelled against Austrian rule. It was this Hungarian uprising that became the formal reason for the war that Kara Mustafa so desperately needed. Thököly, seeing the Ottomans as allies against the Habsburgs, effectively opened the gates to Central Europe for them. He was proclaimed King of Upper Hungary and became a vassal of the Sultan, providing the Ottoman army with a springboard for invasion. This betrayal, as it was perceived in Vienna, was the decisive factor that allowed the Ottomans to achieve their main goal so quickly. Thus, the March on Vienna was not just an external invasion, but the result of a complex political crisis. Kara Mustafa took full advantage of this alliance with the Hungarian rebels, declaring himself the defender of their interests against the tyranny of the Habsburgs. It was a cunning political move that allowed him to present the aggression as an act of liberation. He assembled an army in Belgrade, estimated at between 150,000 and 300,000 men, including elite corps of janissaries, sipahis, and auxiliary troops from all corners of the empire. It was not just an army, it was a moving civilization aimed at a single point on the map. Leopold III himself, faced with such a threat, could find nothing better to do than flee his capital. Together with his court, he moved to the safer Passau, leaving Vienna to its fate. This act, although dictated by the logic of preserving the dynasty, was perceived by many as cowardice and cast a shadow on his reputation. The defense of the city was entrusted to Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, a man of a completely different disposition. Starhemberg had at his disposal a garrison of only about 11,000 regular army soldiers. They were joined by about 5,000 militiamen, including students and craftsmen, ready to defend their homes. These forces were insignificant compared to the horde approaching the city walls. Starhemberg understood that his only task was to hold out at any cost until the emperor could assemble a rescue army. Meanwhile, the Ottoman war machine was set in motion, and its march through Hungary was relentless. Kara Mustafa demonstratively rejected any attempts at negotiation, demanding only complete and unconditional surrender.
We did not come this far for compromise.
He sent Leopold a mocking message, suggesting that he convert to Islam or prepare for the worst. The Grand Vizier was absolutely confident of victory. He was already mentally dividing up the Habsburg treasures.
This news pleases me greatly.
European monarchs watching this drama unfold were divided in their opinions. The French Sun King Louis XIV, the eternal rival of the Habsburgs, secretly gloated and even maintained contacts with the Ottomans. He hoped that the fall of Vienna would allow him to become the undisputed hegemon in Europe. Others, primarily Pope Innocent III, sounded the alarm, calling for a new crusade. It was at this critical moment that a key player entered the historical scene: Jan III Sobieski, king of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. He was the only monarch who possessed both a strong army and a reputation as an outstanding commander who had already defeated the Ottomans. An alliance treaty was concluded between him and Leopold, but its implementation was in question due to complex political intrigues. We are very interested in hearing your opinion. What do you think really motivated the monarchs of that time? Religious duty, political calculation, or personal ambition? Write about it in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to our channel. Are you ready to learn the truth about the most fearsome army of its time? The Ottoman army that approached Vienna in the summer of 1683 was a marvel of 17th century logistics and military organization. It was not just a rabble, but a well-structured force consisting of various elite and auxiliary units, each with its own specific task. At the forefront were the Tatar horsemen of the Crimean Khan, who served as scouts and sowed panic in Austrian lands. They moved quickly, ravaging the surrounding areas and depriving the Vienna garrison of supplies.
These crucial resources will deprive the defenders of Vienna, further weakening their ability.
The core of the army was the famous janissaries, an elite infantry trained for war from childhood. They were professional soldiers armed with the latest muskets and were considered the best infantry in the world. It was they who were to storm the walls and fight in the trenches. Their discipline and fanatical devotion to the Sultan made them an incredibly dangerous opponent in any direct confrontation. Kara Mustafa relied on them as his main battering ram. Next came the heavy cavalry, the Sipahis, who were a feudal militia but were highly trained. Each Sipahi came to war with his own servants and equipment, and their main task was to deliver the decisive blow on the battlefield. In addition to them, the army had countless irregular troops known as Bashibazouks, who were famous for their ferocity, but were difficult to control. They joined the campaign in the hope of rich spoils. The Engineering Corps, or Lagim Jilar, played a special role in the army. They were professional miners and sappers, masters of siege warfare. It was their task to blow up the mighty Viennese bastions.
Be ready to light them!
They began their work almost immediately, laying the foundation for a complex system of trenches that drew closer to the city walls with each passing day. This underground war was no less important than what was happening on the surface. For the Austrians, watching the arrival of this armada from the high spires of St. Stephen's Cathedral, the picture was depressing. In mid-July 1683, the Ottoman army completely surrounded the city, cutting it off from the outside world. A sea of tents stretched across the plain, and in the center of this camp stood the luxurious tent of Kara Mustafa himself. The siege had officially begun, and the clock was ticking for Vienna. The first thing the Grand Vizier did was to offer the city terms of surrender. According to Ottoman tradition, a city that surrendered without a fight could expect mercy, but if it resisted, it would face complete destruction. Starchberg, as expected, indignantly rejected this proposal. His answer was short and clear. He would defend Vienna to the last man. It was a bold but desperate gesture. Kara Mustafa, having received a refusal, did not rush to give the order for an immediate assault, and this was his first fatal mistake. He was confident that Vienna's powerful bastions would fall under the blows of his artillery and the work of his miners. He also wanted to capture the city intact, with all its treasures, which could be destroyed during a fierce assault. This greed and self-confidence gave Vienna precious time. Instead, a methodical, grueling siege began. The Ottoman artillery, numbering hundreds of guns, opened fire on the city. Although the walls were built according to the latest fortification science and could withstand direct hits, the incessant roar exerted enormous psychological pressure. The city was engulfed in smoke and dust, and the inhabitants were forced to hide in basements. The defenders, in turn, responded with cannon fire, trying to prevent the siege works. They made daring sorties, attacking Turkish trenches to destroy sappers and fill in their passages. It was a desperate war of attrition, with each side trying to wear down the other. Starchberg personally commanded the defense, appearing in the most dangerous places and inspiring his soldiers. But time was working against Vienna. With each passing day, food and gunpowder supplies dwindled, and the Ottoman trenches came closer and closer to the main bastions. Underground explosions became more powerful, and the first serious breaches began to appear in the walls. How would you feel if you were in a besieged city, knowing that the enemy was getting closer to your home every day?
We are running out of time.
In the next chapter, we will talk about how one of the most modern fortresses in Europe almost fell because of one man. What if I told you that everything you believed about medieval fortresses was wrong? Vienna in 1683 was not just a city. It was one of the most sophisticated fortresses of its time. After the first Turkish siege in 1529, the Habsburgs invested heavily in its modernization.
We are ready for them.
The old medieval walls were replaced by a massive system of bastions and ravelins based on the Italian system, capable of withstanding the most powerful artillery. It was a star of stone, designed so that each corner could defend its neighbor. These fortifications were a masterpiece of military engineering. They consisted of 12 bastions connected by thick curtain walls, in front of which there was a wide and deep moat, as well as covered passages.
But these walls are stronger.
The most important points of defense were the Berg and Löbel bastions, and it was on them that Kara Mustafa concentrated his main attack. The defenders understood that if these two teeth of the fortress were knocked out, the city would fall. The commander of this fortress was Count Ernst Rüdiger von Starhemberg, and he was perhaps the only man capable of accomplishing such a task. He was an experienced and hardened veteran who knew no fear and was not prone to panic. When he received Leopold's order to lead the defense, he approached it with fatalistic determination. He immediately imposed martial law in the city, mobilizing everyone who could bear arms. His garrison was catastrophically small to defend such a perimeter, only about 16,000 men against 100,000 besieging troops. Therefore, Starhemberg opted for active defense. He was not going to just sit behind the walls and wait for them to be blown up. He organized constant sorties, night raids, and artillery duels to keep the enemy in constant tension. Life in the besieged city turned into a daily struggle for survival. Starhemberg imposed strict rations, realizing that hunger could become their main enemy. With each passing day, portions became smaller and smaller, and prices on the black market skyrocketed. But discipline, maintained by the commandant's iron fist, prevented chaos and riots from breaking out. Starhemberg was everywhere. He personally inspected the posts, directed the extinguishing of fires caused by Ottoman shells, and encouraged the soldiers. Legend has it that during one of his inspections, a shell exploded next to him, but he did not even flinch, continuing to give orders. His personal courage was the glue that held the crumbling defense together. He also proved himself to be a talented psychologist. Realizing that hope was as important a resource as gunpowder, he established a system of communication with the outside world. Brave couriers risked their lives to make their way through Ottoman lines to deliver letters to the emperor and bring news that help was on the way. Each piece of news, even if exaggerated, gave the defenders the strength to hold out for another day. One of the greatest threats, apart from cannons, was fire. Ottoman incendiary shells constantly caused fires in the dense urban development. Starhemberg organized special firefighting teams to respond immediately to any threat. The inhabitants of Vienna, from aristocrats to simple craftsmen, worked together to extinguish the fires and save their city. Despite all efforts, by the end of August, the situation had become critical. The Ottoman miners had succeeded, and huge breaches had formed in the main bastions. Assaults followed one after another, and the defenders repelled them, fighting no longer on the walls but on barricades erected directly in the streets. The city was on the verge of falling, and Starhemberg sent his last desperate message. Don't waste any more time, for heaven's sake. Don't waste any time. It was a unique moment in history when the fate of an entire civilization depended on the resilience of one city and the courage of one man. Starhemberg and his garrison did the impossible. They won 2 months for Europe. Those 2 months allowed Jan Sobieski to gather his army and make a march that would go down in legend. If you like how we tell the stories of real heroes of history, please like this video. Guess what was the most terrifying weapon in 17th century siege warfare? It wasn't cannons, it was silence. Silence followed by a deafening explosion, meaning that the enemy was one step closer. As soon as Vienna was completely surrounded on July 14, 1683, Kara Mustafa gave the order to begin large-scale siege operations, and the main role in these operations was played by the Lagimcilar, elite Ottoman miners. They began digging a complex network of zigzag trenches, known as sapas, which slowly but steadily approached the city walls. These trenches protected the soldiers from direct fire from the walls, allowing them to safely approach the moat itself. The crowns watched in horror as this earthen web grew tighter around their city with each passing day. It was methodical and relentless work. As soon as the trenches reached the edge of the moat, the most dangerous part began: underground warfare. Ottoman miners began digging tunnels deep underground with the aim of reaching the base of the bastions. Their task was to place a huge charge of gunpowder at the end of the tunnel in a special chamber. A successful explosion could bring down an entire section of the wall, opening the way for the Janissaries. The defenders of Vienna were well aware of this threat and organized countermeasures. They had their own miners who listened to the ground, trying to determine the direction of the enemy's tunnels. They placed bowls of water or drums of peas on the ground to catch the slightest vibration. It was a game of cat and mouse, with the integrity of the fortress at stake.
Right below us.
Upon discovering an enemy tunnel, the Viennese sappers would begin digging a counter-tunnel. When the two tunnels met, real battles would take place underground. In narrow, dark passages where there was no room for guns, soldiers fought with daggers and short swords. Often, the defenders simply blew up their tunnel, collapsing it and burying both their own and the enemy underground. Despite all the efforts of the defenders, the Ottoman miners were masters of their craft. By the end of August, they had managed to lay several powerful mines under the key bastions, Berg and Lobel. The explosions that shook the city became more and more powerful. They created huge breaches in the walls, which the Ottomans immediately tried to storm. These assaults were desperate and fierce. The Janissaries rolled in waves toward the breaches, and the defenders met them with musket fire, hand grenades, and boiling tar. The fighting was for every stone, every meter of the destroyed wall. Starhemberg, who was already wounded by that point, continued to command the defense, ordering new fortifications to be built behind the breaches. By the beginning of September, the situation had become almost hopeless. The city was destroyed by artillery fire, and food and gunpowder supplies were running out. The defenders were exhausted by 2 months of continuous fighting. The Ottomans had firmly entrenched themselves in some parts of the outer fortifications and were preparing for a final, decisive assault. Kara Mustafa was confident that victory was in his pocket. He had already sent a report to the Sultan about the imminent fall of the Golden Apple. On September 11th, Ottoman miners laid the largest mine of the entire siege, which was supposed to finally bring down the wall of the Berg bastion. Everything was ready for the flag of the Prophet to be hoisted over St. Stephen's Cathedral the next day. It was at this moment, when the defenders of Vienna had almost lost all hope, that signal fires were spotted on the Kahlenberg hills towering over the city. It was the sign they had been waiting for 2 long months. The army of salvation was here. How do you think a simple soldier on the wall felt at that moment when he saw those lights? In the next chapter, we will learn how diplomacy and faith managed to assemble an army that seemed impossible. While Vienna was holding on with its last ounce of strength, hundreds of kilometers to the west, in the quiet town of Passau, an equally tense drama was unfolding. The fleeing Emperor Leopold I found himself in the humiliating position of a supplicant. He sent desperate letters to all the European courts, calling for help against the common threat. However, 17th century Europe was far from united, and forming a coalition was an almost impossible task. The main opponent of European unity was the French king Louis XIV. He was a sworn enemy of the Habsburgs and saw the Ottoman invasion as his chance. The weakening or even fall of Austria would make him the absolute ruler of the continent. Therefore, not only did he not send help, but he also secretly intrigued, dissuading other German princes from joining Leopold. The German principalities of the Holy Roman Empire were also in no hurry to come to the rescue. They were divided by religious and political differences. The Protestant princes of the north were suspicious of the Catholic emperor's cause, fearing that the strengthening of the Habsburgs would undermine their own independence. Each weighed the risks, and many preferred to wait and see rather than risk their armies. In this seemingly hopeless situation, Leopold found one very powerful ally. Pope Innocent II. He was a man of deep faith and sober political mind, who realized the scale of the Ottoman threat before anyone else. He saw this not simply as a war between the Habsburgs and the Ottomans, but as a decisive battle for the Christian world. Innocent immediately declared the campaign against Vienna a holy war. But the Pope did not limit himself to prayers and appeals. He used the two most powerful tools at his disposal, diplomacy and money. His legates traveled to all the European capitals, persuading, cajoling, and pressuring the monarchs. Most importantly, he opened the Vatican treasury and collected huge sums of money from Italian dioceses to finance the creation of an army of salvation. It was papal gold and diplomatic skill that helped overcome the indecision of the German princes. The electors of Bavaria and Saxony, Maximilian Emanuel and Johann Georg, finally agreed to send their troops. These were significant contingents that became the core of the imperial army, which was slowly gathering on the Danube under the command of Leopold's son-in-law, Duke Charles of Lorraine. Although Duke Charles was a capable commander, he understood that his forces were insufficient to challenge Kara Mustafa's gigantic army alone. He waged a war of position, disrupting Ottoman communications, but not daring to engage in open battle. All eyes were on the north, towards the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Only one man could turn the tide. That man was Jan III Sobieski, King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania. He was bound by the Treaty of Warsaw of 1683, which obliged the parties to come to each other's aid in the event of an attack on one of their capitals. But Sobieski hesitated, and he had good reasons for doing so. The Polish Sejm, consisting of the Szlachta, was not enthusiastic about the idea of fighting for the Habsburgs, whom they did not particularly like. Once again, Pope Innocent played a decisive role. His nuncio in Warsaw literally begged Sobieski to take action, appealing to his piety and promising him eternal glory as the savior of Christianity. In addition, the Vatican provided Sobieski with a huge subsidy to equip his army, which was the decisive argument for the Polish Sejm. In the end, Sobieski made his decision. He was not only a deeply religious man, but also an ambitious monarch who saw this campaign as a chance to strengthen the prestige of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. He was also one of the few who understood that if Vienna fell, Krakow would be next. In August 1683, he gathered his army and set out on a campaign that would forever inscribe his name in history. Are you ready for the shocking truth about who really saved Vienna? Jan III Sobieski was not just a king, he was a living legend. Known as the Lion of Lakistan, he earned a reputation as one of the greatest military commanders of his era, winning brilliant victories over the Ottomans, including the Battle of Kotin. When he decided to march on Vienna, he knew he had almost no time. Every minute of delay could cost the city its life. Gathering the army of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was no easy task. The nobility, although they had agreed, were slow to assemble. However, Sobieski, using his authority and papal money, managed to assemble a strike force consisting mainly of cavalry. The core of this army was his famous Winged Hussar, an elite heavy cavalry considered invincible in open combat. At the end of August, Sobieski set out from Krakow. He had to make a forced march across Silesia and Moravia to join the imperial troops of Charles of Lorraine. This was a logistical feat in itself. The army needed to be fed and supplied, and the roads were poor. However, Sobieski drove his troops forward at a relentless pace, knowing that the fate of Vienna hung in the balance. The army's route lay across the Danube. Charles of Lorraine's engineers built a pontoon bridge in record time near the town of Tulln, a few dozen kilometers west of Vienna. It was a brilliant operation, carried out right under the noses of the Ottoman patrols. the Allied army crossed successfully, and the forces of the Christian coalition were finally united. In early September, a military council of the Allies was held at Stetteldorf Castle. The atmosphere was tense. The German princes, especially the Elector of Saxony, did not want to submit to the Polish king. However, Sobieski's authority as the leading expert on warfare against the Ottomans, as well as his royal title, were indisputable. After lengthy debates, he was unanimously elected Commander-in-Chief of the United Christian Army. The total strength of the Allied army was about 70,000 men. It consisted of Poles, Austrians, Bavarians, Saxons, and other German contingents. It was a motley, multilingual force, united only by a common goal and the figure of the commander-in-chief. Sobieski immediately set about devising a battle plan, and his plan was a bold one. He decided not to march across the plain along the Danube, where his army would be vulnerable to attacks by the superior Ottoman cavalry. Instead, he chose the most difficult and seemingly impossible route, through the Vienna woods, the dense and wooded hills of Kahlenberg, which loomed over the Ottoman camp from the west. No one, including Kara Mustafa, believed it was possible to drag an entire army with artillery through these thickets. This march through Kahlenberg was a real test. The soldiers had to drag the cannons up steep slopes by hand, cutting paths through the forest. The movement was slow and exhausting, but Sobieski knew what he was doing. This maneuver gave him a decisive tactical advantage. He could attack the enemy from above, from a dominant height, where they did not expect him at all. Meanwhile, Kara Mustafa made his second fatal mistake. Despite intelligence reports that movement had been spotted in the Vienna woods, he refused to believe it. He was so focused on taking Vienna that he ignored the threat from outside. He left only weak defenses on the hills, believing that the Christian army would never be able to appear there. On the evening of September 11th, just as Vienna was preparing for the final assault, the Allied army reached the ridge of Kahlenberg. A breathtaking and terrifying sight unfolded before them. Below, as far as the eye could see, lay a huge Ottoman camp, and behind it, in smoke and fire, the spires of besieged Vienna could be glimpsed. Sobieski's soldiers lit bonfires to signal to the city's defenders. Salvation was near. How do you think Kara Mustafa felt when he realized his mistake? In the next chapter, we will learn how one of the most decisive battles in history unfolded. The morning of September 12, 1683, was foggy. The Allied army, having spent the night on the cold hills of Kahlenberg, began to prepare for battle. Jan Sobieski's plan was simple but ambitious: to launch a simultaneous attack across the entire line of the Ottoman camp, using the advantage of height. The left flank, consisting of Austrian and Imperial troops under the command of Charles of Lorraine, was to advance along the Danube, pushing the Ottomans away from the river. The right flank, where the Polish troops were located, was to deliver the main blow, but only after the center and left flank had engaged in battle. The center was occupied by German contingents from Bavaria, Saxony, and other principalities. The battle began with an artillery duel. Christian cannons, which had been dragged up the hills with great difficulty, opened fire on the Ottoman camp, causing confusion and inflicting damage. Austrian and German infantrymen on the left flank were the first to attack. Their task was to capture the villages of Nussdorf and Heiligenstadt, which the Ottomans had turned into fortified positions. A fierce battle ensued for every house and every vineyard. Charles of Lorraine's soldiers slowly, step by step, pushed back the Janissaries, who fought with desperate tenacity. Kara Mustafa finally realized the seriousness of his situation. He understood that his army was trapped between the walls of Vienna, which he was still trying to storm, and the relief army descending from the hills. It was a tactical disaster. He was forced to urgently transfer his best troops from the siege to stop the Allies' advance. However, the Grand Vizier made a third, and this time final mistake. Instead of immediately withdrawing all his forces from the city and throwing them at Sobieski's army, he tried to do both at once. He ordered his janissaries to make a desperate, final assault on Vienna, hoping to capture the city before his camp was destroyed. This assault, launched on the morning of September 12th, was repelled by Starhemberg's garrison. Exhausted but inspired by the sight of the Allied army on the hills, the defenders of Vienna found their last reserves of strength. The failure of this assault meant that Kara Mustafa not only failed to take the city, but also wasted his elite reserves, which he so badly needed at Kahlenberg. Meanwhile, in the center and on the left flank, the battle raged with renewed vigor. The German infantry, having passed through the vineyards, entered the battle for the villages of Grinzing and Döbling. The Ottoman cavalry and infantry launched fierce counterattacks in an attempt to halt the advance of the Allies. The battle proceeded with varying success, and by midday, the offensive began to run out of steam. Sobieski watched the battle from his command post. He saw that his allies were suffering heavy losses and needed support. He also saw that Kara Mustafa had committed almost all of his reserves to the battle in an attempt to stop the Germans. The Ottoman center, where the vizier himself and his headquarters were located, appeared weakened. The Polish king waited for his moment. His elite cavalry, the Winged Hussars, were still in reserve on the right flank, hidden behind trees. They were fresh and eager to fight. Sobieski understood that the strike needed to be timed perfectly when the enemy was at its most exhausted and its ranks were in disarray. That moment was approaching. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, after almost 8 hours of continuous fighting, the Ottoman troops in the center began to show signs of fatigue. Their counterattacks became weaker, and their line of defense buckled under the constant pressure of the German infantry. Sobieski decided that the time had come. He ordered his artillery to fire a volley, which served as the signal for the general attack. The Polish infantry and light cavalry were the first to advance, clearing the way for the main assault. The battle was entering its decisive phase. Ahead lay a moment that would go down in the history books. Closer to 5 o'clock in the evening on September 12, 1683, the weather cleared up and the sun illuminated the battlefield. Jan Sobieski, personally leading his troops, gave the order to begin the attack that would decide the outcome of the day. It was not just an order, it was the moment of truth for which he had come all this way. The Polish infantry and light cavalry were the first to attack, their task being to break through the Ottoman lines and prepare a foothold for the main assault. With a cry, they rushed down the slopes, crashing into the exhausted regiments of janissaries and sipais. The Ottoman soldiers, who had been fighting non-stop since morning, were taken by surprise by this new, fresh attack. Simultaneously with the Poles, their allies also went on the offensive. Charles of Lorraine on the left flank, and the German princes in the center intensified their attack, sensing that the enemy had faltered. The entire battlefield, from the Danube to the Vienna woods, was set in motion. It was a coordinated strike against the entire Ottoman army. And then, when the Ottoman ranks were already disrupted and began to mix, Sobieski brought his main reserve into battle. At his signal, a force appeared from behind the hills that the Ottomans had never seen before. About 18,000 horsemen, the largest cavalry attack in history, lined up on the crest of the hill. They were Austrian and German cuirassiers and dragoons, and in the center, like a steel fist, were 3,000 Polish Winged Hussars. This spectacle was intended not only to defeat the enemy, but also to break their will. The Hussars were the elite of the elite, clad in shining armor. Behind them fluttered the famous wings made of eagle feathers, which, according to one version, made a terrifying whistle during the attack, frightening the enemy's horses. At the head of this avalanche, with the royal banner, rode Jan Sobieski himself. At the signal of a trumpet, this entire armored mass, chanting, "God save Poland," began to descend the slope. At first slowly, picking up speed, and then breaking into a gallop, they crashed into the center of the Ottoman army. The blow was so powerful that it was compared to a lightning strike. The lines of Janissaries and Sipahis, already exhausted and demoralized, were simply swept away. The Ottoman soldiers, who just an hour earlier had been confident of victory, could not bear the sight. They had never faced such a powerful and simultaneous attack by heavy cavalry. Discipline collapsed, and a panicked retreat began. Soldiers threw down their weapons and banners and ran wherever their eyes could see, trying to escape the steel horsemen rushing towards them. Kara Mustafa tried to stop the flight. He was in his camp, near the green banner of the Prophet, and personally urged his bodyguards to stand to the death. But it was too late. Sobieski's hussars broke through to the Grand Vizier's headquarters. Kara Mustafa, seeing that all was lost, grabbed the sacred banner and fled the battlefield himself, saving his own life. It was a complete and unconditional defeat. The army that had threatened one of the greatest cities in Europe that morning ceased to exist as an organized force by evening. The flight was so panicked that the Ottomans abandoned everything: their camp, artillery, supplies, and the untold riches they had accumulated during the campaign. Jan Sobieski was the first to enter the captured camp. He proceeded straight to the luxurious tent of the Grand Vizier, which was now empty. Looking around at the abandoned splendor, he reportedly said, "This is what an infidel looks like. He couldn't even lose with dignity." Vienna was saved. The city's defenders, who watched this incredible attack from the walls, could not believe their eyes. The siege, which had lasted 2 months, ended in a single day. Starhemberg and Sobieski met the next day amid the ruins, and the commandant of Vienna, the hero of the defense, bowed his head before the king who had saved the city. The aftermath of the Battle of Vienna was as spectacular as the battle itself. When the smoke cleared, the victors were confronted with a scene of utter devastation. The Ottoman army had not simply retreated, it had fled, losing all control. The entire field in front of Vienna was littered with abandoned weapons, tents, cannons, and personal belongings. The losses of the Ottoman army were enormous. Tens of thousands of soldiers were lost in battle and during the panicked retreat. More importantly, all of the siege artillery, more than 300 guns, was lost. Huge supplies of gunpowder, food, and fodder, which were so badly needed by the besieged city, were captured. But the most valuable prize was the Ottoman camp. This camp was a veritable city filled with treasures. The soldiers of the Allied army, upon entering it, were stunned by the luxury they saw. Silk-lined tents, carpets, gold and silver tableware, chests with coins and jewels. They even found exotic animals and an entire harem that Kara Mustafa had brought with him. The spoils were so rich that they almost led to discord among the Allies. The soldiers, especially the Germans, rushed to loot the camp, and the officers had a hard time restoring order. To stop the looting, Jan Sobieski ordered all the spoils to be collected and divided fairly. In his famous letter to his wife, he wrote, "The vizier left me his tents, cannons, and untold riches." Among the trophies captured in the camp were Kara Mustafa's luxurious tent and his personal belongings. But the most important symbolic trophy was the green banner of the Prophet, which the Grand Vizier had thrown down during his flight. Sobieski sent this banner to the Pope as proof of the great victory of Christian arms. Salvation came for Vienna at the very last moment. The city was almost completely destroyed. Of the 8,000 militiamen who stood up to defend it, Only a few hundred remained in the ranks. The losses of the Starhemberg garrison were also enormous, but they held out. Their 2-month defense made the victory at Karlenberg possible. Kara Mustafa, gathering the pitiful remnants of his army, retreated towards Hungary. His campaign, which had begun so brilliantly, turned into a great catastrophe. He tried to shift the blame onto his subordinates and even executed several pashas. But that did not save him. When news of the defeat reached Istanbul, Sultan Mehmed IV flew into a rage. In December of that year, the Sultan's envoys arrived in Belgrade. They brought Kara Mustafa a silk cord, the traditional Ottoman sign of an execution order. The Grand Vizier, who until recently had been the second most powerful man in the empire and dreamed of conquering Europe, was strangled on the orders of his master. His ambitions cost him his life, and his empire its future. For the Habsburgs, the victory at Vienna was a turning point. It not only saved their capital, but also allowed them to launch a counter-offensive. Shortly after the battle, the Holy League was formed, an alliance of Austria, Poland, Venice, and the Pope, with the goal of completely expelling the Ottomans from Europe. The Great Turkish War, which began with this battle, lasted another 16 years. It led to a series of brilliant victories for the Allies and ended in 1699 with the Treaty of Karlowitz. Under this treaty, the Ottoman Empire ceded vast territories to the European powers for the first time in its history, including almost all of Hungary. Ottoman hegemony in Southeast Europe came to an end. The Battle of Vienna on September 12, 1683, was one of those rare events that divide history into before and after. It was not just a military defeat. It was the end of Ottoman expansion in Europe. Never again would Turkish armies threaten the heart of the continent. The threat that had hung over Europe for 3 centuries was finally lifted. The victory also had enormous psychological significance. The myth of the invincibility of the Ottoman military machine was dispelled. European powers, which had previously preferred to pay off the Sultan or fight him individually, realized that by joining forces, they could not only defend themselves, but also win. The Holy League became the first successful example of such a pan-European coalition.
With Hungary secured, we must look south. The time has come to solidify our dominance in the region.
Vienna, which had so heroically withstood the siege, was rebuilt and became even more magnificent, transforming into the cultural capital of the continent Europe. For the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and for Jan Sobieski personally, it was a moment of supreme triumph. The savior of Vienna became a hero to the entire Christian world. Paradoxically, however, this victory marked the beginning of the decline of Poland itself. Drawn into a long war with the Ottoman Empire, the country depleted its resources, while its neighbors, Austria, Prussia, and Russia, gained strength. The legacy of this battle is still alive today. In Vienna, you can still see trophies captured from the Ottoman camp. It is said that it was from bags of coffee beans left behind by the Turks that an enterprising Pole named Jerzy Kulczycki opened the first Viennese coffeehouse, laying the foundation for the city's famous coffee culture. And according to legend, the shape of the croissant was invented by Viennese bakers to mock the Ottoman crescent. The strategic importance of the Winged Hussars attack is still studied in military academies today. It was the last triumph of heavy cavalry, the last time armored horsemen decided the outcome of a great battle. Soon, infantry armed with bayonets and rapid-fire artillery would reign supreme on the battlefield, making such attacks impossible. The Battle of Vienna showed what can happen when one side is blinded by overconfidence and the other finds the strength to unite in the face of a common threat. The mistake made by Kara Mustafa who preferred rich spoils to a quick military victory, became a lesson for all future commanders. And the steadfastness of Starhemberg and the audacity of Sobieski will forever remain in history as examples of true heroism. The siege of Vienna was the moment when the walls of Europe truly stood firm. It stopped one empire and gave rise to another. It was a cruel, desperate, and at the same time glorious page in history, reminding us how quickly the fate of nations can change, and that sometimes it takes just one timely blow to save an entire continent. This event became a real watershed. It not only changed the political map of Europe, but also influenced cultural development, marking the beginning of the Baroque era in rebuilt Vienna. It was a victory that allowed Europe to breathe freely and enter a new era. We remember this battle not to celebrate war, but to understand how fragile peace can be and what incredible efforts are sometimes required to defend it. This is a story of how courage, unity, and one of the greatest cavalry charges in history were able to turn the wheel of fortune. We have gone through the smoke and thunder of one of the most decisive battles in history. From Starhemberg's desperate defense to Sobieski's impossible march and the devastating attack of the Winged Hussars, the Battle of Vienna was a true drama in which the future of the continent was at stake. It proved that even the most powerful army can be defeated if its opponents can combine courage, strategy, and faith in victory. The legacy of 1683 is not only the salvation of Vienna, but also the beginning of a new balance of power in the world. It was the last gasp of Ottoman expansion and the first breath of a new imperial Austria. What other great battles of the past do you think have changed the course of history so dramatically?
Heavy.
Suggest topics for future videos that you would like to see on our channel in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next research projects.